And if you're trying to place Antonio Pappano's accent, he's from Connecticut.
Good luck with that, yeah.
But born in England, which is why when he was knighted, he was able to take the title of Sir Antonio Pappano. So he is making his Carnegie Hall debut tonight. For 15 years, he has been the music director of the Royal Opera House at Covent Garden in London. And for a dozen years, he's been the music director of the orchestra he's here to conduct tonight, an orchestra that has not toured America since the 60s. So we asked him to tell us a little bit about this ensemble from the Academy of Santa Cecilia.
The Academy goes back to 1585. The first president was Palestrina, and many of the musicians went to the Conservatory of Santa Cecilia, and it's been a fantastic training ground. And the wonderful thing about the Santa Cecilia Orchestra is that we've been touring so much. It's not such a big deal for an orchestra that usually tours, but for us it was kind of dormant, and it's only been in the last 10 years or so. My orchestra, it has a real taste for getting out of Rome. Rome, the most beautiful place in the world, arguably. I mean, I'm sure they tore up the town yesterday all day long, such beautiful weather, and just, I'm so happy for them that they got to spend a day here to soak it all in, because it's a very important moment for them. The orchestra hasn't been here in 48 years. It's a long time.
48 years between appearances at Carnegie Hall. It's really something. And apparently they're all out enjoying the evening in New York, too. There isn't one player on the stage yet. So the orchestra is still backstage. So we're still a couple of minutes away from being able to start this concert, because all of the musicians are behind the stage door. There are still a few people coming in to get seats for this concert tonight. I suppose it is not to be expected when there's a sellout crowd that things would be held up a few minutes to allow people to come in. And some orchestras like to enter in this fashion. They wait until everybody's gathered backstage, and then in 60 seconds they can be on the stage.
Some of the European orchestras have been known to do that. This particular European orchestra, though, we have not mentioned their official name yet.
Yes.
You want to hazard it?
It is quite something. Their formal name is Orchestra dell'Accademia Nazionale di Santa Cecilia, the Orchestra of the National Academy of St. Cecilia. The name, whether it's in Italian or English, requires an enormous marquee, and we have been told that it is okay for our purposes to call these musicians the Santa Cecilia Orchestra, or Rome Santa Cecilia. And the last time, as we mentioned, that they played here in Carnegie Hall was October of 1969. The orchestra itself turns 110 years old next year. And as Pappano told you, John, the history of the institution that is behind it goes back 432 years. The National Academy was not founded as a school, but as an accademia in a much older sense of being an association of Italy's best composers and musicians. 100 years ago, one of the Accademia's elected members, and they had an academy, they had a school at that time, so he was also the head of the composition department, was Ottorino Respighi. And tonight, the Santa Cecilia...
There is a little musical amuse-bouche.
Yes, exactly right.
Wrong language, I suppose, but something to set the stage for us. And that will be music by Giuseppe Verdi, who was kind of a foundational figure in Italian history. You know, we think of Rome as an ancient city, and
which
of course it is. Yeah. But Italy as a modern nation is a relatively young country. And it's astonishing to think that someone like Giuseppe Verdi in Italy or Jan Sibelius in Finland, that these people were kind of patriots who helped in the mass movement that created their respective nations. And that was the case with Verdi in Italy.
It's nationalism in a sense of the word that it's not used very often right now, but it's a sense of patriotism among a group of people, and it has been a part of art and classical music forever. Dvorak being another excellent example of composers who wrote music to give their people a common spirit. And Verdi's opera Aida comes usually with a little tiny overture in it, but he also wrote a longer one, which is comparable in some ways to the Beethoven Leonore overtures. Mm-hmm. So they're more like it's more like a symphonic poem on not necessarily even musical themes from the opera, but on just themes from the story of the characters in the opera. And that's the piece that's going to be the curtain raiser, as it were, tonight here at Carnegie Hall. And the first work that Antonio Pappano will ever have conducted at Carnegie Hall after playing Verdi's music in hundreds of performances in opera houses around the world, especially at Covent Garden in London, where he's been the guy in charge for about a dozen years now. Well, the applause you heard was indeed for the St. Cecilia, the Santa Cecilia Orchestra, coming on stage here at Carnegie Hall now to bring us the opening of this concert. The grand piano that Martha Argerich will bring to life is already set in center stage, but we're going to have a curtain raiser of Verdi before.
And the Sinfonia, as it's known, is not a, as you say, not a genuine symphony.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sounding together, literally, of various themes that Verdi thought might serve as a great opener for the opera Aida, but when he first heard the rehearsals of the orchestra, he decided, nah, it's a little too much. I'll go with the shorter prelude. And so he essentially took the piece home and left it there, and it was Toscanini who appeared at his home and, without asking, apparently, copied the piece and took it back to New York, where he eventually gave it its world premiere. But it remains a kind of a rarity.
Well, when you're performing Aida, it's enough already.
Yeah.
You know, Aida, it's enough already.
Basta, as the Italians would say.
So they have a short overture that's usually used. The applause you're hearing now is for Carlo Maria Parazzoli, who is one of the two men who share the concertmaster duties in the Santa Cecilia Orchestra. So finally, they're all on stage with a sold-out house before them here at Carnegie Hall. And we are about to hear Sir Antonio Pappano's first appearance on the podium at Carnegie Hall. A remarkable conductor, born in England of Italian parents, much of his teenage years spent in Connecticut. And he has said that he never really wanted to be a conductor. He was hoping to grow up to be the world's greatest accompanist. But fortune and time and his own very apparent talent had a different path for him in mind. And now he is one of the best-known opera conductors in the entire world.
And after 15 years at Covent Garden, a fixture on the London music scene, he was, I believe, the youngest music director they ever had when he first signed up. And here he is, out on stage at Carnegie Hall, in the sold-out Isaac Stern Auditorium to get things started tonight with the Santa Cecilia Orchestra of Rome. We'll hear the rarely heard Sinfonia from Giuseppe Verdi's Aida. And if you're trying to place Antonio Pappano's accent,